Hi, Julie Jones from SSB Performance, Smarter, Stronger, Better Mindset Training. Here with this week's Mindset Made Simple Tip of the Week, brought to you by Game Day Sportswear. This week we're talking about perfect in practice. Then what the heck happens? Well, you know they say practice makes perfect, but really in all reality, practice makes building confidence. Practice refines skills. Practice doesn't make perfect. And if we're not careful, all the analyzing, all of the adjusting, all of the fine-tuning, all those things that we do in practice on a daily basis can hurt us when we walk out of the bullpen and go get onto the field. Why? Because we spend most of our time in deliberate practice, thinking about executing, thinking about how we're moving, thinking about our mechanics, thinking about all these things, and that can lead to issues when we're trying to perform. So my contention is in this week's tip that we need to make sure that we're spending time in performance practice. Performance practice where we allow the automatic things, the automaticity of what we've practiced to trust and move into trust mode. Yes, practice is vital. We know that. We've got to have repetition, repetition, repetition. That's what makes us feel better. The separation is in the preparation, no doubt. But if we only practice in this deliberate mode, and we're constantly thinking about what we're doing and constantly thinking about adjustments and not just letting things go, then when we step on the field, we have a tendency to take that with us, and that is not what helps us. So why do great warm-ups come crashing down as soon as we step out onto the field of play? Well, research in sports psychology and in neuroscience shows that overanalyzing during performance interferes with our muscle memory. Dr. Cyan Bielak, who's the president at Dartmouth, also a great researcher, just a few things on her list of things already done. Her studies show that choking under pressure happens when we focus too much on mechanics in high-stakes situations, and this disrupts our well-trained skills. It leads to poor performance because when we start to think, our brain, that part of our brain is taking over, and the part that knows what to do gets pushed back. That's the simple softball coach's terms in it. But choking doesn't just happen in high-stakes situations. It could be after the first batter that we walk. It could be losing the first 50-50 in a game. It could be missing our first shot and then being afraid to shoot again. It's not just that last foul shot at the end of the game with everything on the line where we choke. Choking, to me, can happen as soon as we realize, oh my gosh, I don't feel the same now as I did when I was over there warming up. And that's the problem. And I thought about this today when I was jumping rope. I haven't jumped rope for quite a while, but I've jumped rope quite a bit in my life. And I was just jumping at a clip. Everything was good. And I thought, gosh, I haven't done this for a while. Boom, 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 boom. Still pretty good, still pretty good. And then I purposely, doing a little research, started to think about my feet and think about how quickly I was moving the rope. And guess what? I got slower. For the first time, after I started thinking about what I was doing, I tripped. In fact, they say a little trick, if somebody's hitting the crap out of the ball or shooting the lights out, ask them what they're doing. Make them think about their mechanics. And guess what? It's not automatic anymore. And now these repeated skills, these things that we know how to do, are disrupted. But we can jump, we can throw, we can shoot, we can do all this without conscious thought, but we can't leave it alone. We think that we've got to think about everything. And that's not necessarily the case. Performing at our best, if we're going to do that, we have to rely on automaticity, and that is executing movements without conscious thought. This process involves different parts of our brain, not our prefrontal cortex. It does, that's where we plan, so we'll talk about that in just a second, but our basal ganglia, that's where we refine patterns, right? Our motor cortex, where we execute skills, and our cerebellum, which helps us be smooth in our execution. All of these places are where we need to be focusing on, not our thinking brain, when we move a skill to automatically. Now, clearly, when we're first learning, that prefrontal cortex is really engaged. But the more that we do it, those other three things start to take over with other systems in the brain, and they allow us to just go and do. We can do it with our eyes closed. In fact, sometimes we might be better off than if we're doing it when we're thinking. So how do we flip the switch? Well, it starts in practice, and that's our biggest mistake. We've got to be able to flip the switch in practice. We've got to be able to practice this way. Most training, as I mentioned, relies on deliberate practice. We've got to spend that time analyzing, changing things around, obviously. But we also need to move into this performance practice where we simulate competition. And of course, we do that. And that, as a coach, I know that's one of the hardest things. Like, how do you really make it feel like pressure? Well, we get our heart rate up. We put in punishments. We do all these different things. But there are a couple things that we can do to practice in practice that will hopefully then move out to the field. One of the things that I love is sports psychologist Dan Abrams. He runs a Sports Psych Show. It's a podcast. He talks about the think box and the play box. And when we're in, and this is something we have to practice in practice. We're not just going to go to this in the game under pressure. But we have a place where we think and we make our plans. We think about what we need to do. We need to think about what worked, what didn't work. We go through our after action review. What were my intentions? All those different things. What caused it? What did I learn? However quickly we can do that. That's our think box. As soon as we step out of that, we have made a decision to commit to our plan. Step out. We're now committed. We're now into the play box. If in that play box at any time we start to think about changing our plan, we have to step back into the think box. Because in the play box, we execute. In the think box, we think. We use that part of our brain there. We use the other parts of our brain in this play box. I love this because it puts boundaries around things. I wish that I could build boundaries for people to say, you can't think here, you can think here. Everything whatever's going on around you in the environment does not matter here. It does matter here. We've got to pull in information here. We've got to go with information we have here. It would be so nice if we could do that, but this think box, play box thing sort of gives us this framework of saying, once I'm in the play box, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, period. That's it. If I'm not ready to do that, then I've got to step out. Now, I know sometimes we can't do that. We've got a 20-second clock. We've got this. We've got that. But the more we practice it, just like any other skill, the better we are at executing it. The better we are at flipping a switch between plan and play. That's the difference. It's got to be practiced in practice. We also have to move into this play box under pressure. So we're going to pull a little information from musicians. We've got a musician in this house. We're thinking a lot about practice and a lot about performing. We've got solo and ensemble coming up. Just had a concert last week. Big deal around here in these parts. But if we only practice in a controlled, low pressure setting, we're going to be a great practicer, not a great performer. And musicians rehearse in performance mode. So a musician's performance strategy might look like this. And I'm going to read through this. They're going to set the stage, right? They're going to press record. They're going to leave the room. They're going to re-enter. And then they're going to step onto the stage of competition, right? Because they're competing a lot as well. Number two, they're going to fully commit. No stopping, no restarting, no replaying a measure if you screw it up, not going on your trombone when you screw up. None of that. We're working through it. We're working through it. We're performing as if we have an audience, one that matters, even if it's just our phone recording. And everyone has a phone that can record themselves. I ask kids all the time, do you have video that we can use of you doing great stuff or where we can compare it? I can't believe how many kids really don't. They've got it in their pocket. They're videoing themselves all day for TikTok. We should be using it for these kinds of things too. Number three, they're going to do it again, and they're going to record it again. And then number four, they're going to evaluate it with purpose. They're going to use a simple post-performance sort of reflection to rate their proficiency, to rate their mental performance, to make a note of what changed from the first recording to the second recording, and make notes of what they were thinking right before they started and during the performance. This is great for us too. Athletes should do the same. Announce your name. Step into the arena. Imagine the person that you want to impress the most as they're watching. Imagine the championship is on the line. You used to do this in your backyard all the time. Record the performance and evaluate it objectively. We have to make sure that we are going through the performance, stepping up just like you would. Which takes us to the next one. Another mistake that we make when we're not separating practice or deliberate practice from performance practice is that we use a pre-performance routine in the game, but we don't practice it. We've got to use it in that rehearsal, because if we don't use it in the rehearsal, we're not going to use it when we need it under pressure. Yeah, we're going to use it when we're hitting 4 for 4, but when we really need it, out the window, because we're thinking about a million other things. A pitcher I recently worked with just came back from an injury, and prior to this, she didn't think she really needed one, and now she put one in after, like, she walked a batter and then something else happened, boom, it vanished. So we've got to institute this pre-performance routine, because research shows that consistent pre-performance routines increase accuracy, they reduce anxiety, and they shift our focus from what if thinking to execution. No what if thinking, we're executing. Think box, play box. So, I don't know why I'm exhaling like that, but I'm just thinking about this play box thing. How's she doing now with it? Well, we're in the season, we're in the heat of things. So she is practicing it at practice. She's rehearsing it mentally. She's even using it when she goes into other situations. She's using a reset or a pre-performance routine or a bounce back strategy, whatever she wants to call it, or whichever one she's using, even when she gets distracted under pressure outside of softball. So mentally rehearsing your pre-performance routine and then watching yourself perform is another great way, just like the musician, to go back into this pressure performance. Another performance enhancing strategy is to shift our focus to outcome rather than body mechanics. And when I say outcome, not I have to throw a strike or I'm thinking about the strike, I'm thinking about something outside of me. So I'm not thinking about I've got to get my foot down, I got to get my elbow here, I got to get my elbow in the slot, all this other stuff. And I know as well as you do, because I did it all the time, we talk about mechanics all the time. Research shows that if we think about watching the ball go into the hole instead of thinking about what our hands are doing as we're trying to putt it over, we have a better chance of making the putt. If we think about where we want the ball to go, not thinking about exactly what we need to do to get it there, either from here or down below, we have a better chance of getting it there. External cues, external focus makes a difference. They even have a theory for it, external focus theory. Dr. Gabrielle Wolf, who is a great researcher when it comes to figuring out what makes us tick. Thinking about how disrupts movement efficiency. The more you think about your mechanics, the less likely it is that they're going to flow. We can also go back to our breathing techniques, the physiological sigh, box breathing, all these things. Activates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we want to be in so that we can think quicker, make better decisions, that we don't feel as anxious, because we know this, a calmer nervous system improves reaction time, and it helps our motor control when we're under pressure. That also leads us to the fact that we can up our pressure, we can up our heart rate, we can throw in distractions, we can disrupt practice, we can disrupt our flow, and then work on getting it back with our breath. They call that stress inoculation training. And then when we get into training, our amygdala does not react as freaked out because we have been training it to settle. How can we simulate the pressure? Well, your heart rate gets up. We've got to try to disrupt whatever it is that feels comfortable. If we can make people feel uncomfortable and have them practice getting back to comfortable when they get in those pressure situations, they won't be as disastrous. They won't feel as disrupted. When we train in performance mode, big moments feel like opportunities, not like threats. We have to be able to flip the switch from thinking to trusting. All that practice that everyone complains about, we need to use it. The problem is we do it and then we put a barrier between the practice and the performance. And we've got to leave the deliberate practice there and take the performance practice with us and trust that we can do what we've trained to do. We have to constantly remind ourselves and our athletes that our brain and bodies are built to execute what we've practiced. Our brain is amazing. It doesn't need our help. In fact, when we try to help, we're doing our opponent's job for them because we're making life a lot harder on us. And of course, this all sounds so great and simple, and I know that it's not. I understand that. I've been on both sides, the coaching and the playing, the performing and the teaching, all the different sides of this. But the truth of it is if we can practice things like the think box and the play box, if we can practice a breath, if we can have a pre-performance routine when everything's going great. I talked to a kid last night. She is killing it. I said, we've got to build a refocus technique. She's thinking, I'm fine. You're not going to be fine always. So we practice it now so that when the pressure comes, we know exactly what to do. We shut off our brain and we turn on our trust. Easier said than done, but it's not going to happen under pressure if we haven't at least tried it over and over and over again in practice performance or performance practice situations. So if you would like to talk more about this or get your team started on the mental side of practice and the mental side of performance, reach out, juliej@ssbperformance.com. I'd love to connect. Until next week, think about how you're going to stop disrupting the flow and trust your training. Have a great week.